Backstage Brawl, guys. Welcome back to the Brawl Zone. It's been far too long. Well, it's been a week because we had the Dirty Heels podcast last week. And if you saw the Backstage Heels, you know we had a very good time. But we're not with our full cast of our usual roast gallery of brawlers, as you would say. But we do have us, meaning the tag team champions of the IWC, myself being the People's Champion. And of course, to my left is Mr. Diamond Cutter, Big E. And of course, the fantasy booker extraordinaire, Kid Ty, the captain of the Christian Club, aka Mr. One More Match. Guys, it's been a little, it's been a week. Obviously we did the Dirty Heels podcast. Today, if you haven't saw on our Instagram page, as we're recording this today on a Saturday, Big E interviewed the owner of GSW Professional Wrestling. E, quickly, tell us, how was that interview for the fans who haven't watched or are not familiar with GSW Pro? So just go into that real quick.
Well, I want to give a big shout out to Brandon Ascari. Definitely a great guy, man. He came on there. He was just one of the fans, you know what I mean? And that's basically what he explained during the interview. He was one of the fans, and this is why he started it. And he had a love for pro wrestling, and he actually started wrestling, which was pretty dope. So, injury kind of sidelined him, and, he picked up right from there, and he combined both of his loves for wanting to do pro wrestling. And, now he's he went to school for filmmaking and all of that. So definitely check out GSW Pro. I'm going to plug their show in Inception, February 20th. Backstage Brawl will definitely be there. So if anybody wants to go, they have the Eventbrite link. I'm pretty sure it's on the GSW Pro Instagram. If not, they have it on Fight. They're going to be on Fight TV as well. You have to search them by searching GSW Pro, not Global Syndicate Pro Wrestling, just GSW Pro. But Brandon, thank you again for coming on the show. Thank you again for giving us the interview. Definitely check them out. They're going to have Michael Elgin there, Shaw Guerrero, just a lot of good things they got going on. So definitely check those guys out, man. They're going to be something special.
And on a personal note, I'd like to just commend you for basically having a very good interview. Like, it was very natural the way you did it. Like for me seeing, who you are and how enthusiastic you are about, especially our craft. It was great to see the fact that you have a niche when it comes to this. I will say that. It's the same way you handled the Danny Limelight interview. I think you did a very good job with that. And
thank you, man. Appreciate it.
And now, especially with the owner of GSW Pro, you did a very good job with that. And I can't be any more prouder. I don't want to speak for myself. I'm pretty sure, when everybody else, especially from the team that watches it, and everybody else who got a chance to tune in on the IG Live, did a fantastic job. And he answered some really good questions. Some that I was able to ask, and he answered it and gave a dope alternative to one of wrestling's most taboo of questions. But we'll get to more on that, in another time. It's been a good week in professional wrestling, another good solid week for pro wrestling. SmackDown once again being the A show, as it's always been this week. One thing I would say about SmackDown before giving it off to you guys, the last 3 weeks, they have been producing great continuity with their characters and development with their stars. It's becoming more well-rounded. Like the last 3 weeks have had elements. I'm not saying it's an exact carbon copy of the Ruthless Aggression SmackDown, but it has elements that made you reminisce about the 03 SmackDown and the way it was run in the early parts of the Ruthless Aggression era, with Adam Pearce being the authority figure, Roman Reigns being the foil and heel champion. Side characters that are becoming much more larger than life, Shinsuke Nakamura, and now Cesaro being showcased for the second week in a row against Dolph Ziggler. There's a lot of things that has gotten much praise from the SmackDown team, as well as the show itself. And quickly, what are your guys' thoughts about them upping their game as a show in WWE this past week? Not just in WWE, but in all professional wrestling thus far in 2021.
I'm gonna go first. I like the fact that SmackDown is showcasing one Cesaro. because this has been something that fans have been calling for years. Fans have been calling for Cesaro to at least get a world title match, at least. You know, um, it's looking like it might go that route, depending on who is going to be the champion after Roman. Roman, once again, I mean, he gets a lot of praise on this show. Um, Once again, strong promo last night. He kind of fumbled just a tad bit. There was I don't know if it was intentional or if it was, if he actually did fumble on his promo, but he fumbled just a little bit, but it definitely picked back up. It does have some type of elements of reminiscent of old SmackDown of 03, 04. It does have that kind of element. I was very disappointed I didn't get to see Scrap Daddy fight. I was disappointed. I'm gonna put it out there. I really want to see Adam Pearce one time just lock up. I mean, even if it was against Paul Heyman, I didn't care. I already knew what route they were going, but I wanted to see Scrap Daddy fight at least one time. One time. And the one thing that I definitely appreciated last night too, they did a callback last night. They did a callback with Bianca Belair and Bailey and the triathlon thing. They did a callback to Matt Hardy and MVP with the basketball thing. I appreciated that. I really did. I also appreciated how Bianca Belair looked, but that was besides the point. Um, but I definitely appreciated them showcasing Bianca Belair because they're showing Bianca Belair can be a larger than life on screen talent. Especially with her picking up Otis. I don't know if she was prepared for that or not, but Otis is like, I mean, he's lost weight now, but Otis is
About
probably
300.
315, 310. And she picked that man up like it was nothing. And that was impressive. And shout out to Sir Wilkins. He definitely wrote this in a comment, put some respect on Bianca Belair's name, and you definitely have to after seeing something like that. So she is definitely the uh, word to Lex Luger, the total package.
Yeah, I mean Bianca's definitely been showcasing, but shout out to Billy as well, being the other party in this feud that they're going through, and I love it as well because it showcases, it keeps Bailey relevant, and this adds a different layer to Bailey because we seen her more so for the huggable Bailey, and as exhibited in the Stone Cold interview, she wants to separate herself from her initial character when she came to WWE, and you're starting to see more of who she is as an actual athlete and how multi-layered she can actually be. So Kid Ty, you've been quite solid for quite some time. So what are your thoughts so far?
I know it had to pain Bailey, having played basketball, to suffer one of the worst crossovers in national television history. Nah, in reality, I think that I don't personally see SmackDown as like the A show for WWE television every week. I think that it battles NXT week by week. It really depends on, where each show goes. To give NXT some credit, I think that both shows kind of, I think if there was to be a brand war on a consistent basis in WWE, it'd be between NXT and SmackDown, which is kind of where I like things because that's where a lot of the best content comes out. As far as how SmackDown's been doing, I do enjoy more consistency. I do enjoy the fact that they're putting more effort into allowing the characters to, you know, grow and actually build themselves. Like Sammy staying handcuffed to the barricade for pretty much half of the show, and then knocking out Biggie and Apollo was great.
Yeah,
And it's directly a result of what happened the week before, and the fact that Bianca Belair, it's not even just the fact that not Sasha, the fact that Bailey did like a easier course. The fact that they modified it halfway through, I thought that was a cool detail to show like, oh, Bianca's going to not only surpass this like the regular course, but she's going to go above and beyond, which is kind of her whole goal. Like the fact that she is one of the best pure athletes in the entire company. So they're going to, they're going to go above and beyond to push that strength amongst all the other qualities that she has, like being a really confident talker. The fact that Apollo and Big E were very hard hitting. It wasn't a longer, more drawn out story. The fact that they just went right into things was a nice change of pace, especially considering Big E's been having more like, those classic type, not classic type, but more in the vein of those older style intercontinental matches. So doing that was pretty cool. Roman and Paul Heyman's "I'm from New York, I'll whoop your ass" is one of the best lines I've heard all.
Yeah.
Roman's doing well in his role. Kevin Owens promo, I felt a lot of what he was saying. And I think that for me and for a lot of wrestling fans in general, regardless of where you stand as to what you like in professional wrestling, when it comes to a professional wrestling show, you want more attention to detail. You want people to be able to believably understand where you're coming from. You want more authenticity. You want people to not feel like their time is wasted. I remember William Regal had a pretty good quote in one of his interviews that I've seen recently where he said, as any type of athlete or performer, you go in there and it's your job to make their time, like the time that they give you, worth it. There's a trust between the fans and the athletes where the fans are giving you their time. So you want to make the most out of their time because you can't get time back. So I appreciate the fact that SmackDown is getting better steadily, gradually, week by week, and has been doing so for a minute now. And the fact that they are as consistent as they are right now, the hope is that they continue on, they keep pushing things. I am going to say my one takeaway from SmackDown. I feel bad about saying this, but as a fan, I wanted to see a longer match with Dolph Ziggler and Cesaro. Just from an old school wrestling standpoint, I really wanted to see them like chop it up and have one of those like hidden SmackDown gems. But what we got wasn't bad. I just wish it would have had 10 more minutes stacked on, and we could have just. There were a lot of people who didn't get entrances on the show. It was kind of weird. Like we kind of cut from commercial.
I've noticed that. I think because especially with the pandemic, there's a lot going on in terms of you have to recoup some revenue, and through advertisements is the best way. So I think as much as I hate commercials, especially during a show, you would rather have a show flow instead. But I understand the business side of it in terms of you have to recoup some of the revenue by doing these commercials. But I will say this before we move on. I will say that the best part of what SmackDown's been able to do is, and we've been talking about this amongst ourselves through group chats. They're doing things. It's the simple things that they're doing. It's less is more. And they're also finding ways to just make things simple and putting the effort and getting good at the simple things rather than just going above and beyond and making something that shouldn't be there and pushing it in your face and forcing, the issue, and it doesn't come off well from your fan base. So that's one thing I could definitely credit them for doing so in that factor. Ty, final thoughts before we move on.
Never have Asuka come out to Charlotte's music ever again.
Oh my God! Yes,
Thank you. She's not only.
Oh my God!
She's not only the Raw Women's Champion. This tag team title situation with the women's title is already a mess. But if we're gonna go with it, she put some. You talk about putting respect on Bianca's name. Put some respect on Asuka's name. Easily the MVP of 2020 for the women's division on Raw. Only thing that kept it really relevant. The fact that she's coming out to Charlotte's music when she has 2 chips on her shoulder, literally, and she's been holding it down as long as she has, for the competitor that she is, for the wrestler that she is, for the striker, for the personality, for everything that she's done for the company when she should have been pushed to the top, a la Brock Lesnar upon the main roster, even if she had it in NXT. All the shit that she's put through, that really struck a chord with me. I don't know if many people caught that, but her coming out to Charlotte's music when she's the champion of Raw, and she's coming in representing Raw on SmackDown, that pissed me off.
I gotta say, me and Todd don't agree on a lot of things when it comes down to the Charlotte talk, but I definitely agree with that. I definitely feel like Asuka, you could have done the separate entrances. You know what I mean? And another thing before we move on, because we didn't touch on Monday Night Raw. Nobody wants to touch on Monday Night Raw. But I hate the fact that Charlotte is in this storyline with Lacey Evans. I don't like anything about it. Lacey Evans is basically a sugar baby trying to get a sugar daddy. I don't like it.
PS5.
I don't like it. PS5. I don't like it. I don't like it. Charlotte is way better than that. Charlotte is more than that. Charlotte, you don't watch, you don't listen to the show.
As many times as they've had Charlotte, as many times as they've had, like, we're gonna move on, but like, I just want to put this out there. They're having, like, as many times as they've had Charlotte outcast her dad on television. Granted, real life things come into effect and change things. Don't get me wrong, but like, as many times she's way too, for everything that she does by herself. It's like we go 3 steps back every time they bring Rick back, and that's no offense to Rick, but you don't have to constantly associate her with her dad. Like, one of the things I appreciated more was when she was just called Charlotte. She didn't have to keep up the Flair name. It was more of a subtle way to be like, yeah, you're a Flair, but you're your own person. She had her own tributes to her dad with the figure 8, amongst other things, in the Flair flip in the corner. And it seems like every time they don't have anything directly for her, they just bring back her father, or they keep referencing her father. It kind of makes me sad because she's better than that, like.
I'll add to that because we really do have to move on. I'll add the fact that with Charlotte, good and bad in terms of how they brought her up and her accolades, which are earned, obviously. As a character, away from the title, on a main roster scene, I think they can do so much more with her. I think they have barely scratched the surface with Charlotte Flair as a character. As a champion, as an athlete, listen, they've done everything that they could. They haven't exhausted it. I mean, they're trying to exhaust it, but I said they're trying to exhaust it. But as a character, I don't think they scratched the surface. I think you've seen with Bayley, you've seen with Becky, you've seen with even Sasha, they're starting to basically carve a good niche for themselves as a character on screen. And that's one thing we didn't even touch upon, but obviously at another time with her match with Reggie on SmackDown, which was kind of cool. It was a nice Cirque du Soleil kind of event. But with Charlotte, she hasn't scratched the surface on who she actually is. Yes, you are the daughter of the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Yes,
that's not all you have to be.
Career. That you've also carved out that's true. Not only the fact that you carved out your own career in your own right, but we have to see who Charlotte is aside from the Flair name. And I don't think we've got a chance to see that yet. And I hope we get a chance to see it soon. Now, with that said, the Wednesday Night Wars, it seemed, obviously for me, I'm not saying it's a general consensus, that NXT, for me, and he also said earlier, won the night in terms of all around better show. I mean, listen, Finn Balor and Kyle O'Reilly, especially towards signaling, teaming up to face the 1 and 2s next week. The Fight Pit. I like the fact that Timothy Thatcher's 2-0 in the Fight Pit, and especially against credible performers like Tommaso Ciampa, and of course Matt Riddle, who's now on Raw, in his own feud with Bobby Lashley. I like the fact that they're giving Thatcher something, and in the past year, 6 months even, Thatcher has really come on strong as a big competitor in NXT. What are your thoughts about Timothy Thatcher and what they can possibly do with him moving on?
I'll go first this time.
Yeah. Hey, Ty.
As far as Timothy Thatcher goes, I said it last year that I think Timothy Thatcher, and I think we even said in the predictions, I think that Timothy Thatcher is going to be a key component for NXT going forward. Mm-hmm. And I think in terms of what Timothy Thatcher can do, there's always a chance to once again face Finn Balor, who beat him the first time when they fought in NXT on a takeover. He has a match history with Karrion Kross back when he was Killer Kross on the Independents, and also an Impact and beyond. But there's so many different. I think the thing that makes it very interesting is the fact that Timothy Thatcher comes across as a legitimate threat. He's a very authentic character. He has the pedigree behind his ability to show you that he is who he says he is. And the crop of talents that are in front of him right now are people who mesh very well with that style, whether it be Finn Balor's very Japanese influenced ground game and striking style, or Karrion Kross's straight up MMA type style, Timothy Thatcher's MMA and catch wrestling influence style fits with those to a T. Tommaso Ciampa being an overall tough guy who knows his tricks of the trade in professional wrestling, using bully chokes in their first match, to them fighting in the fight pit, which I do want to say this about the pit. I love the fight pit concept. I love the fact that they actually refer back to the Lion's Den with Owen Hart and Ken Shamrock being the original version of it. I like that consistency. The only thing about the fight pit that I personally don't enjoy is the fact that we start from the top and go to the bottom. For me personally, I would much rather they start in the cage, like on the mat, and just go from there, because I feel that this match is a hybrid of a lot of different things. Obviously, you like the UFC, modern MMA being in cages, but it doesn't always have to be like that clear cut. It really is just the tip. Like, this is bare bones wrestling. It's just a mat, two people that don't like each other, and they can't escape. There's no ropes to get out of, right? The cage can work as both symbolically, them mimicking what MMA has done, but also symbolically, we can't escape. And I like the fact that Thatcher is 2-0. I like the fact that this is his match. I kind of wish they would have done this for Brock Lesnar with the actual WWE steel cage when he went to the main roster, when he came back to the main roster in 2012. But my thing with the fight pit is a great concept. I think between the two MMA influence concepts, between Raw Underground and the fight pit that were born both in the same year, this is the one that I would much prefer stay around. But I'd rather they start in the cage. I don't want them starting up on the loft or making their, because it's like, at that point, if y'all really hate each other, fling some bitch off the cage, or have them fall to the ground. If you want to get people as immersed as possible into that, have them start in there, beating each other into the cage, using all the illegal strikes and holds, gouging, fish hooks, do what you want. Because in there, it's sort of like Fight Club, or like those old Jean-Claude Van Damme things, or, blood sport. Just let them mess each other up. So very high thoughts of Thatcher. Glad he's undefeated. But we need to start fighting in the cage right away, in my opinion.
Biggie, what are your thoughts, man?
I mean, Todd just said everything for me, basically. I mean, it's if anybody has UFC 4, it's like backyard MMA fighting. That's what it is. If anybody knows that mode in UFC 4, that's exactly what it is. It's just bare knuckle boxing, straight up fight. I don't like you, you don't like me. We're just gonna go at it. And I enjoyed every minute of it. Tommaso not going over was the right call. I do like the fact that Timothy Thatcher is 2-0. This is his go-to match. This is his go-to match. And I like the fact that they're putting a go-to match with a star. Like, we all know The Undertaker, his thing was Hell in a Cell. Now, Timothy Thatcher's thing is going to be this fight pit. So now, when there is an eventual main roster call-up, is the main roster going to do the fight pit? That's the next thing. That's questions they got to ask. I mean, it can happen. You never know what's going to happen.
It can happen.
It can happen, but I don't want them to put a main roster spin on it. The only thing that I would want them to change is what Tyler said. Start off in the cage. That's it. That's the only thing I wanted to change. Everything else is fine.
Because like, you got these two people, like the way they look at, they're fighting in the weigh-ins, they're doing all this stuff, like traditional pro wrestling stuff, and not just MMA stuff for people watching. Like, this literally, right. But the fact that they're doing this and they're on the loft, I'm just sitting here like, I would have threw the sumbitch off the shit. I would have knocked them off. I would have jumped down or something.
But my thing is this. I like the fight pit. Going off to AEW. AEW was not the show for me. I think they showcased more of the inner circle through anything, because they had like that 3-way tag team thing. So I think that was more focused on that. And then it was also Negative One's birthday, Brody Lee Jr. So they focused on that as well.
That was a hard one.
I did really enjoy when he did his dad's bit. If anybody watches Being the Elite and he threw the papers, like it reminded me so much of his dad. Like, he has charisma for this. You know what I'm saying? So I enjoyed. That was probably the only thing that I really
I was
enjoyed
talking.
about the show.
That.
You know, our boy had a match on AEW. Danny Limelight. He had a match.
I'm happy.
Shout out to Danny Limelight, man. Yo, he's been killing it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's the week for me. I didn't really enjoy. I didn't see Impact. I didn't watch. I saw Monday night, but I didn't enjoy Randy Orton's promo. We can talk about that a different time because we're gonna sit here and harp on that forever and ever. Amen.
I'd rather mention.
Do you guys want to get into the main topic of today?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This was about to happen because now everybody knows that the Royal Rumble is coming up. It's Royal Rumble season. So we can get into the talk about the Royal Rumble itself. The best of the Royal Rumble, the worst of the Royal Rumble, your favorite Royal Rumble, the favorite matches of the Royal Rumble. And we can get to the nitty-gritty about the Royal Rumble. Obviously, the Royal Rumble was an event that was the idea of the late, great Pat Patterson. It was something that Vince McMahon did not really much care for. But obviously, the only big event that they had back in the day was WrestleMania. And then in 87 came the Survivor Series. And then from that came the Royal Rumble. And of course, 88, and then SummerSlam later on. Has now become dubbed as one of the big four, and which kicks off the year in January. So, fellas, based on the years of the Royal Rumble, I believe we're entering because it began in 88, I believe, and now we're in 2011. So it's been what? Well, they could probably go 34 years or so. 34 years of the Royal Rumble. In that time frame, which of the ones you feel has been your personal favorites out of all the Rumbles? I mean, obviously we weren't alive for the inception of those ones, but of course we have the network and we're historians of professional wrestling. So, it's okay to look back and say, well, I like that one, even though it wasn't my time. So with that said, what do you think was your favorite Rumbles coming up?
I already know. I got quite a few, but if we're talking 92 was the one, and shouts out to Talk of Champions, Shantice and Stan. Definitely check those out. Check those guys out.
I was asking the question.
I actually enjoyed 92. 92, if anybody doesn't know, 92 is when they had the vacated WWF title, and it was for the Royal Rumble. And of course, the infamous promo with a tear in my eye. This is the greatest moment of my life. Ric Flair. Right. Anybody who knows me, I love Ric Flair. Ric Flair was the man in 92. So I enjoyed the hell out of this. The matches on the card. Let me see. I had to pull up the matches. The few matches that were on the card, you had the New Foundation and the Orient Express. Fun fact, did you know that Mr. Fuji he opened up the Royal Rumble 91 and 92 as the Orient Express? I never knew that. He opened up both shows actually, 2 years in a row. You had Piper versus the Mountie when Piper won the Intercontinental Championship. That was a feel-good moment for me. That was definitely a feel-good moment for me. You had the Beverly Brothers and the Bushwhackers, Natural Disaster and the Legion of Doom. That was a hell of a match. Natural Disaster and Legion of Doom. So there was tag team wrestling at its finest. So 92 is definitely one of my favorites. Another one of my favorites I'm definitely going to talk about 2009 when Randy Orton first won. I think that was one of my favorites as well. 2009 was definitely a good year for the Royal Rumble. 2001 was definitely good as well.
There you go.
We all know Stone Cold Steve Austin won, but I liked it for Triple H versus Mankind in that street fight. Holy shit. Let me tell you something.
Wasn't that 2000?
Those guys killed each other.
No, that was 2000.
That was 2000 or was it 2001?
No, that was New York City.
Let me see. Hold on. I'm looking it up right now.
Because Triple H faced Austin in I think they.
Oh no, you're right. 2001 was Kurt and Triple H. So that was 2000. I like 2002. 2000 was yo. They killed each other. Anytime you put Mick Foley in a hardcore, any type of hardcore match, he's going to perform. And I enjoyed the hell out of this. Madison Square Garden, you know, that was one of the big ones. You had what? The Hardy Boys versus the Dudleys. You had Chris Jericho against China and Hardcore Holly. The New Age Outlaws and the Acolytes. Triple H and Cactus Jack, and then The Rock winning the Royal Rumble. That's just great. It was great stuff.
My boy Taz debuted in Madison Square Garden as a member of the WWF at the time. And the crowd was hot. Man, like, I think it was around the time when Kurt Angle, I think he faced Kurt Angle that night, when Kurt Angle was doing his shtick at the time. And this is when Kurt Angle was having his undefeated streak. And Taz was giving it to him. I think Taz won a reverse decision.
Taz debuted that night. He debuted. That was they were actually the first match. Kurt went out there and cut a promo. He cut a promo of how he was undefeated, and then Taz debuted, ironically, in his hometown of New York City.
Hard went crazy.
And the pop was amazing. I loved it. I love that opening match. That was great. Those are two technical wrestlers, technical guys that really get down in the ring. And Taz is such a he's such a bulldog in the ring. You know, he might not be the biggest guy as far as height goes, but he's gonna give it to you. And him and Kurt definitely had a match.
I would die on the hill by saying this before I pass it off to Ty, because I'll go last with my favorite Rumbles. Taz was, to me, like the antithesis of what Rick Steiner was in WCW, if it was a single star, because they were just brute, pound for pound, technically sound, take you out and kick your ass. Like, think about it.
I've never looked at it that way. That's why I just had to sit back and think about that one.
Right?
I can see that. I can see it.
This is why we do this here at the Backstage Brawl. This is why we do this.
I see it.
Kid Ty. I mean, obviously you are a ruthless aggression savant, but you're also a great historian. And when it comes to this, so in terms of the Royal Rumbles, which has been your favorites and why?
Okay, so admittedly, when we came in, I didn't know this was going to be the theme until like we just got started recording. So I'm a little bit behind on material. I'm gonna work with my memory here. So, hopefully next year I'll have more moments for y'all when we do this next year. But right now, some of the ones that stand out the most in my mind are definitely, I believe it was the '95 Rumble when Michaels hit his foot on the ground and did the whole skin the cat and 1 foot touch, which set a precedent.
I appreciate
for a lot of Rumbles coming forward, because what you could get away with in the Rumble is another thing. Like, there's so many different things about the Rumble outside of just the pay-per-view, but the actual match itself, the things you could do. We've been very blessed to see many different saves in the Rumbles from the likes of guys like Shawn Michaels, John Morrison, especially obviously one of the gods of the Royal Rumble and Money in the Bank, along with Shelton Benjamin, Kofi Kingston. Naomi would later go on to add to the mantle Casey Catanzaro, who debuted a Cancun tornado turned leg drop or back senton on NXT recently in the Dusty Rhodes Classic tag match for the women. Also, shout out to WWE for doing that. I hope the tag titles stay in NXT for a while. I hope the winners get a number one contenders match for that pretty soon. That's a whole nother video. We'll talk about that another time. But
yes.
Casey Catanzaro using her ability, especially since she got most of her notoriety from Ninja Warrior, where escapism is key. What do you call it? We've been exposed to moments like that. We've been exposed to some amazing eliminations, hilarious eliminations. Some of my favorite moments from the Rumble, yes, Taz's debut in Madison Square Garden was an awesome moment. Obviously, the surprise entrance we've seen over the years. We have some funny ones like Drew Carey. Another debut that isn't too far from our memory is the debut of AJ Styles in the 2016 Royal Rumble.
Oh my God.
Which was reminiscent of Taz's in the sense that even Taz brought it up in his interview, how when he was about to go out there, he was afraid that no one was going to know who he was, coming from a third company in the tier system. TNA at that time, had been the secondary company, but it was still kind of like an ECW situation where, even though TNA is more like WCW, where WWE was so big, you didn't know if a lot of people in the crowd, even if it was a hardcore fan base, like in New York, would, come to you. And for Taz, it was him coming home literally in his hometown. It was Florida in 2016 when they went to the Rumble, I believe. I believe they were in Florida. And that is one of TNA's home bases outside of Nashville. Everybody knows that the Impact Zone. So the fact that he had the geographic advantage worked to help AJ. And AJ's known all around the wrestling sphere outside of it. I'm glad he got the reaction that he did. I still hate Kevin Dunn for the fact that the camera angle was messed up in the original footage.
Oh
Y'all
God, we're not
probably
even
will
gonna
never see
talk
that.
about the camera.
Y'all will
I
never
wanna know
see
what the
that.
babyface do, man.
On the
Never.
revisionist version on the WB network, assuming that's what they did, you'll never go through the pain that we went through just watching Roman's face like,
But you know what's funny about that debut, and we're not gonna harp over it for too long, but the debut of AJ Styles to this day, that was almost 5 years ago. Number one. Number two, still get goosebumps every time. As soon as I see Roman eliminate Rusev and he's hyping himself up in the corner and he's sitting there and he's waiting, and then you hear the buzzer go off and then you hear AJ's music and he's just sitting there looking confused because he doesn't know whose music it is. And then you hear the roar of the crowd once they see Phenomenal come on the Titantron.
it was a big
it was a big deal.
Another episode.
Another episode. But point is, it was huge. I think it was one of the best debuts in the past probably 10 years. Not even gonna lie to you. By far.
Other moments from the Rumble. Because we're gonna talk about winners, we're gonna talk about this and that. Other moments. I want to bring out some honorable mentions. Well, Santino's run in the 2011 Rumble.
Santino coming out and getting eliminated as soon as he gets in.
I wasn't
Kane having the most eliminations.
Oh, but Kane having the most eliminations. I was gonna say.
Oh, well, that's Roman now.
There are some. I don't know. Are we gonna get into winners?
We're gonna get into winners because I'm gonna say something very controversial about winners.
There are two things I want to bring up. One, my favorite final two of all time in a Rumble. Royal Rumble 2007, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels.
Oh yes.
Duking it out.
That's hot.
Thank
you.
In Texas. Oh, thank you.
Yes. In Texas.
That was hot.
You had two Texas homegrown duking it out for the final spot, foreshadowing what would be one of the greatest matches in WrestleMania history. That was my favorite final two of all time. My second favorite final two would probably be Batista and John Cena in the Royal Rumble 2005, where Cena I don't know how many Rumble Cena's gotten fucked up on his knees. Because I remember in the 2004 Rumble, Cena had to limp with the knee brace for a while. And then in the 2005 Rumble, Batista dumped him over, and I think he hurt the same knee over again. So I'm just sitting here like, the Ruthless Aggression was not a good year for John. Like, it's not a good period for John Cena in terms of Rumbles. But up until the 2008 Rumble when he came back in Madison Square Garden, another big moment. But those are some of my favorite moments. There are going to be more since we're going to talk about winners and different Rumbles. So,
For me personally, Eric hit it with 92, obviously for a lot of reasons. Ric Flair. It was probably one of the most genuine Rumble wins I've ever seen, especially for Ric Flair, because like at a time when he and the Crockett promotion and WCW had odds and stuff like that. He was in WWE or World Wrestling Federation at the time. He had a lot of fun. He always credits that time for having the most fun that he's ever had in professional wrestling. That 91 to 93 run that he had in WWE, the WWF, he had a great time. And him becoming champion was like, he won it the first time. It's like, for him, it was like the equivalent of you being an international player playing everywhere else, but you finally come to the NBA and you win an NBA championship, and it means something. Like, sure, you already have a Hall of Fame career outside the main promotion, but as soon as you come in, it's like, listen, I did it everywhere else, and now that I did it here, I'm validated. There's nothing that you can't tell me about my career. And Ric Flair at that time was a huge name, and that resonated with me for a lot of reasons. Obviously, 2007 was another one, like you just said, for the reason, not because of Shawn Michaels versus Taker. For me, being a big Undertaker fan at the time,
yes,
he was always a gatekeeper to help elevate the next generation or the person that's coming up. Never the person to actually be compensated for his sacrifice and his efforts on basically pushing the company forward. Whether it's winning championships that had short reigns or that didn't make any sense or didn't give any fruit to the true character of who The Undertaker was at the time. And at the time, entering his 17th year with the company, it felt all the more perfect because at the time, 10 years prior, he won the WWF Championship, as I said, at WrestleMania in Chicago. 10 years later, in Detroit, he won the World Heavyweight Championship in Detroit.
And that was the genesis of God level Taker that most people remember growing up during that period because, like you said, he never had to. He's even admitted as much in interviews how he didn't need to be that guy because he'd usually lose off shenanigans or he would be that gatekeeper. So, we've seen him be WWE champion a couple years prior as a heel with the Big Evil thing. Fast forward to 2007, it was his first time being world champion and being the, fully validated guard of SmackDown. Like, you already knew it. But him winning the world title, the whole series with Batista and Edge that would last about a year and some change, all started from that Rumble.
Yeah. So another Rumble that I can honestly say that I resonated with, I loved watching growing up was the '98 Rumble. Not because Austin won it. It was because of a lot of shenanigans that happened during that match.
Yeah, that Rumble was kind of weird.
It was weird. It was weird for the reason. It was so funny because
it was a good weird though.
Mick Foley came out 3 times.
Nobody would notice.
And
Mick Foley came out 3 times, nobody would know that.
And I like how they foreshadowed the hell out of the fact that The Rock was the next guy, because who was the person who got eliminated last? Was The Rock against the Austin, because they ended 1997 rivaling each other for the Intercontinental Championship. And going into January, the very next month, they still got beef. Rock was re-awarded the Intercontinental Championship because Austin was going after Michaels. And Rock was like, listen, man, we still got beef. And the fact that he was becoming his own that year, because 98 was huge and crucial for the career of Dwayne Johnson, who literally became The Rock that year. And that was a crucial moment, but it was a lot of hijinks. Chainsaw Charlie coming out, doing some hijinks,
It was just it was just weird. It was just like people you didn't expect.
And of course,
it was go ahead.
And then obviously the casket match between Undertaker and Kane, which was also a huge moment because it was a crazy, because it led to a change in Shawn Michaels, because he was, from that match, his life changed forever because of that match, because him overselling costed him 4 years of his career ultimately, but it also saved his life. But that's just another thing. We'll talk about that along the road.
So I want to get into one more thing before we get into winners. 2017 does not get enough love. 2017, in my opinion, does not get enough love. I enjoyed 2017. 2017, that was the second time Randy won.
Oh, yeah.
But I enjoyed, the only thing that I didn't like was the championship match. And we all know why nobody liked the championship match.
Yeah.
We'll get to that in the winners, because I'm about to rip that whole shit to shreds.
I didn't. Hold on. I agree. There's going to be some points we're going to agree with this, because that wasn't the best Rumble. But as far as the card goes, I enjoyed the card.
Yeah.
I think besides, I'm looking at it right now, you had Charlotte Flair, who was a Raw Women's Champion at the time, against Bayley. You had Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns, obviously reversed, Kevin Owens being the heel and Roman being the face. You had Neville, who had just turned heel, go up against Rich Swann for the Cruiserweight Championship. John Cena and AJ Styles. I mean, that card, besides, the hijinks that were involved, it was pretty good.
If we're going to talk about some of the best matches at the Rumble, which I assume we're going to do after winners.
Next. That's
next.
Oh, I'm just
preluding it.
Okay.
But
okay.
I'm just going to get into we're going to get into winners. So controversial again. Jesus Christ, I don't like seeing stuff like that.